Welcome back to the Toxin Free podcast. As always, I'm your host, Wendy, and this is where toxin-free living meets real life. And today we're talking about something that is very personal, probably to every single person listening to this, and that is the issue of pesticides, specifically the most popular and most widely used pesticide, glyphosate. Now, for decades, there has been tons of research that has shown that there is an increase of cancer, as well as lots of other medical issues that we're going to talk about and touch on in this episode. But also for the same amount of decades, Bayer and Monsanto and the people that stand to make a lot of money from the use of glyphosate in America, they have tried to debunk, rip apart, accuse of bias, all of the studies that's been done. They have put forward their own studies that claim, no, this is completely and absolutely safe. Well, just a couple weeks ago, a long-term international, we're talking like not just the main institute in Italy, which has been doing a lot of the glyphosate research over the last decade, actually multiple decades, but this included Boston University and some of the other leading universities across the globe. They tested 1,000 rats and they had a control group. So they gave the rest of the rats in 3 other groups the amount of glyphosate that it was equal to the amount that the European Union deems safe. And you're not going to believe what the results are. Let's dive in. Real quick before we start this episode, let's have some real talk. The clean living space is really loud right now. One person says this is toxic and another person says this is fine. And next thing you know, you're having a full-blown meltdown in the aisle of Whole Foods. If you are over the confusion and you just want some clarity, I have something for you. My newly updated top 25 toxins to avoid isn't just a fear-based no list. These are the ingredients that actually disrupt your hormones, cause cancer, and have the science to back it up. They're not just opinions, it's based on actual facts. But what makes this resource different than anything else out there is I talk about ingredients you should use with caution. Just because something is synthetic does not mean it's toxic. And just because something might irritate your skin doesn't mean it's going to irritate my skin. Those ingredients should not be talked about as being toxic. This resource is no fluff, no shame, and just clarity. It's completely free. You can download it at toxinstoavoid.com. That is toxinstoavoid.com. Okay, let's get back to the episode. So this study is important for a lot of reasons, but the biggest one is you. You probably go to the grocery store and pick up whether it's produce or processed things, crackers, cookies, oats, grains, all of that. And you may be somebody who thinks, oh, I should buy organic, but maybe you don't really understand the impact of glyphosate. Maybe you've heard that, yes, it can cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is what a lot of the lawsuits have been about. Maybe you have also heard in the news that Bayer and other pesticide companies are trying to get full immunity from all lawsuits. So just like the lawsuit in Georgia, where there was a actual jury that said, no, you need to pay X amount of money to this person who was harmed by glyphosate, they are trying to get laws passed across the United States that would shield them from any liability of any harm done from glyphosate. Their argument is this: farmers have to use glyphosate in order to grow food, or they will not be able to grow food and everybody in America will starve. And here's the thing. When you are not held liable or responsible and you have immunity for something like a pesticide, then there's truly no control. The American people have no idea, is that safe? Could it be safer? Because everything becomes biased after that. So what does the independent science say? Up until this point, the independent science has said, and I'm just literally going to read, I have studies showing and connecting glyphosate to neurotoxicity, liver inflammation, endocrine disruption, reproductive harm, and major gut microbiome damage. We have also had a lot of data on cancer risk. So let's take a look at this study and see what they found. The research is part of a global initiative called the Global Glyphosate Study. And while it was led by a major cancer research center in Italy, which is called the Ramazzini Institute, they really tried to make this a concerted effort to be an international look at this issue of glyphosate, because this is not just an issue that impacts Europe. It is not just an issue that impacts America. It impacts wherever it's sold across the world. So they brought in people from Boston College, George Mason University, King's London University, Center of Monaco, University of Bologna, the Institute of Agricultural Biology and Biotechnology, the Italian National Research Council. There's more. There's a really long list. The point I'm trying to make is this was not one institute, one person who really wanted some biased data. This was a lot of really credible major universities that were involved in this. So what they did was this. They took over 1,000 rats. That's a lot, PS, by the way. And people are going to ask, why don't we test this on people? Could you imagine what that would be like? We don't test on people. That is why it's so hard to prove that these chemicals actually cause the issues that are being looked at, because a person's diet, a person's lifestyle, all of that it has to be taken into effect. In this case, they had a control group. They had a group of rats that received 0 glyphosate. And then in the other 3 groups, they set apart the rats and they used 3 different amounts of glyphosate. And they tested the amount that would be basically the same per body weight in a rat as in a human if it was the European Union standard of acceptance for safety. Okay, so the amount of glyphosate that's allowed to be in food in Europe, that is what they gave these rats starting at the prenatal stage, which if you're a pregnant woman, your baby in a prenatal stage is going to be exposed to glyphosate. So they wanted to know, what did that look like? So of the 3 groups that were given a safe amount of glyphosate, they all started growing tumors and getting cancer, and cancers that are super rare in those rat populations. So leukemia, which glyphosate has been linked to leukemia in other studies, what this found was leukemia was the most prevalent, and it happened in rats at a much younger age. So that lends to the science that already exists that prenatal exposure to glyphosate can increase the risk of leukemia when that baby becomes like a few years old. Listen, this is not a fringe study. This is not like some crazy science. This is an international coalition trying to explain to people, trying to explain to regulatory agencies, glyphosate causes cancer, and it has infiltrated all of our crops and all of our food. And so here's the argument that I've been hearing from different states where these laws trying to shield pesticide companies are happening. They have videos of farmers saying, we can't farm without glyphosate. And the reason they can't farm without glyphosate is because Monsanto has given them all of these seeds that with the intention that they would spray Roundup all over them. And that's the way they've been farming for decades, because that is the way that American agriculture was pushed. Regenerative farming and organic farming doesn't require any of these synthetic pesticide uses. The problem is you have to take your land and your soil back to the way it was before you introduced the pesticides. You have to heal your soil. You have to bring back all of the minerals and the mycelial network of bacteria and fungi that live under there. You have to actually heal the land that you've been growing on. You have to plant cover crops. You're going to have to go get organic seeds. You're going to have to completely change the way that you farm. You're going to have to understand natural ways to use pest control. There's just so many things that a conventional farmer that is using these seeds and spraying Roundup that they're not having to do. The saddest part of all of this is before big agriculture rolled in, regenerative farming was what we just used to call farming. It's the way that we used to do things. And sadly, these big, massive commercial farms are no longer able to do that because they have been spraying pesticides on them for so long, and they don't have any other way to mass produce things. But here's the thing, if we could get more land back to regenerative land, those farmers could actually yield more food that is higher nutrition, higher mineral count, better for everyone to be eating. They can have cover crops that don't require irrigation because now you're keeping all of the rain capture. There's so many benefits, long-term benefits. The problem is there's going to be a transition. And if we, the American people, want farming in America to stop using glyphosate, we have to pick up our phones and we have to call our representatives and we have to tell them 2 things. Number 1, pesticide companies should not be given liability shields. If they know and have been using pesticides and they know it causes cancer, they should be held liable. That's number 1. Number 2, we want money to go to farmers to help them transition to regenerative and organic farming. Unless we start investing money into these farming communities and into these big ag, frankly, even though they make billions of dollars in profit, we are going to have to help these people transition their land to regenerative land. And the only way they're going to do that is if the USDA starts giving grants to farmers. And so number 2, tell them we need to start giving grants to farmers to transition to regenerative and organic agriculture. It is the only way to save our food system and save our health at the same time. Okay, so if you're listening to this and you are like, oh my gosh, so we're all going to be exposed to glyphosate and we're all going to get cancer. No, there's nothing you can do about exposure to glyphosate when you're out. It's just everywhere. It blows on the wind. There's going to be exposure no matter what decisions you make. And that's just something we can't worry about. But what you can do are some very basic things in your home. Number one, filter your drinking water. There is pesticides, including glyphosate, in your drinking water. So if you filter your drinking water, you're already getting rid of like one of those major exposure points. Number two, buy organic when you can and when it matters. So when does it matter? It matters when you're talking about the dirty dozen, your fruits and things like that absorb more pesticides. So when you're buying organic fruits and vegetables, try organic. And when you are buying crackers, oats, grains, things like that, corn stuff, that typically has higher amounts of pesticides. Those are like pesticide-laden crops usually. So buying those organic is a really good way to avoid glyphosate. And then if you're going to buy like crackers and cookies and things like that, look for a label, a glyphosate-free label. Made Good is a company that makes bars that are glyphosate free, but they basically what that means is the end product that they're selling has been tested and does not even have trace amounts of glyphosate. So that's something else that you can do. And then the other thing is you can avoid using weed killers that include glyphosate, like Roundup. And actually, if it's not Roundup, it might even be something worse. So really try to transition any weed control that you do in your yard to a much safer brand that is not using glyphosate. And I really hope that this episode didn't scare you, but it empowered you. I hope it empowered you to shop in a way that you are knowledgeable about what you're looking for. I hope it empowered you to pick up the phone and call somebody in your state legislature or at the federal level, whoever represents you, and tell them that we're just not going to put up with it. Like pesticide companies should not get off scot-free for making billions of dollars off the American public, period. So tell them you want pesticides out of our commercial agriculture and let them know we want the government to help these farmers start to transition their farms over. That's all for now. I'll see you next week.